Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni moli wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so honored and so wicked happy that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Tell your kids' teachers, their principal, their librarian. And also, please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is coming to us from Chicago, Illinois. She's Florence Ann Romano, and she's encouraging us to build our village and let love in and to ask for help. Before we let Florence into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by Dear Libby. Will you answer my questions about friendship? Is your child lonely? A recent study of over 2,000 people aged 12 to 18 found that teens who experience loneliness are at a greater risk of leaving school with lower grades than young people who don't feel lonely. The findings also suggest that without the right support, loneliness can increase the risk of developing other problems, including mental health difficulties. And Dear Libby, will you answer my questions about friendship? Trusted 15-year columnist Libby Kisner offers a breakthrough approach to friendship. This hands-on guide for dealing with everyday friendship struggles faced by teens today will help guide your child towards flourishing friendships and vibrant self-expression in every stage of their life, and is a book that can be read and reread at any age. Get your copy today. Dear Libby, will you answer my questions about friendship? By Libby Kisner. This episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is also brought to you by Snowman at Halloween, a delightful picture book by Caroline and Mark Beener. Have you ever built a snowman and discovered the next day that his grin is a little crooked, or that he's slightly shorter than the day before? Maybe you've wondered, what do snowmen do at night when no one is watching? An autumn snowfall is a perfect opportunity for a boy and his sister to build some snowmen. But when she brings out a box of Halloween costumes, the snowmen have a chance to celebrate Halloween just like everyone else. Snowman at Halloween is a delightful addition to the best-selling Snowman at Night series. Mark Beener's illustrations are absolutely delightful and charming. Caroline Beener's words are just wonderful. This story is fantastic. It belongs in your family library. Snowman at Halloween by Caroline and Mark Beener. Join us right now from the beautiful city of Chicago. Our guest is here today to encourage us to build our village, let love in, and ask for help. Please welcome to the show, Florence Ann Romano. Hey, Florence, how are you?
Hello. What a great introduction. I'm so energetic. I'm thrilled to be here.
Florence is a really wonderful person because I flubbed the first attempt to introduce her. So I really appreciate that. That love that she's giving me. I will have you in my village, Florence.
Oh, you're so sweet. Listen, we're not perfect people. There's no reason to ever be hard on people for having to start over. Don't even be mad about it for a second.
So, Florence, you have an interesting background. As I understand it, you were a nanny for 15 years?
I sure was. Yes. I saw the good, the bad, and the ugly, but mostly the very, very good. And I loved every single second of it. It was really one of the greatest times of my life.
My grandmother, who was absolutely one of my best friends, became a nanny very late in her life. And she adored it. And she only took care of kids from one family, but they became part of our extended family. And she loved them and they loved her. And what a beautiful relationship it was.
That's the holy grail. And what a beautiful thing that your grandmother gave to those children and also what was reciprocated.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I felt was the most special part about it was how those families, how those children really, carved out a place in my heart that was just meant for them. And I learned great lessons, from being a nanny, from also watching the dynamics of other families and the values of other families. And so, there was a lot to be gained, from that time in my life. And for your grandmother, for example, I really feel like there's a calling for it. You feel pulled to it in some sort of way. And clearly she was doing what she was meant to do.
Yeah. What a nice, thank you for helping me remember that. That was really special. So right now you are out trying to encourage the world to build their village. What do you mean by that?
I thank you for asking that because we hear that phrase all the time about, build your village and everyone's like, okay, great. Where is this village? Is there a phone number to call? Are there directions to the village? What does that mean? And the truth is I always would get a little mad about that phrase because, it's really meant the original intention of that quote was it takes a village to raise a child. And, now we kind of just say it takes a village, also insinuating though you're talking about families and children. And the truth is we all deserve a village. Whether or not you have children does not mean you are exempt or do not qualify to have a community. And I really wanted people to understand that there's an advocate out there, me, hopefully for you to show you that there are different ways to build that community. There are different ways to prioritize that in your life. And no matter your age, you do deserve to have it and it is attainable.
As you're speaking, I was just, the thought that ran through my mind is that the folks who don't have kids, the folks who aren't in relationships, they probably need a village more than anybody.
Absolutely. The older you get, the harder it is for you to form meaningful relationships because, look at what happens as we get older. You're in school and, the world is your oyster. You've got, everybody everywhere and you've got friends for days. And then school ends and you hopefully, have this career and then you meet people through your career. But okay, what happens once you don't have those things? Once you don't have those built-in opportunities for friendships, you have to work a little harder to find those people. And the truth is, it's not about the quantity of people. It is the quality of people that you have in your life and you specifically choosing those people for different reasons. I always look at my landscape of friends and I think to myself, gosh, I don't have any of these friends for the same reason. Every one of those friends fills a different part of me, a different part of my soul. They feed me in a different way. And I love that because, there's the friends you go to for tough love. There's the friends you want to go out with and have a crazy night. There's a friend that's going to give you the best relationship advice. So when we start actually breaking down the village and why you have the people you have in your life through accident or design, it's interesting to really come up with those reasons. And it also helps you realize who you are more deeply and how you're choosing the kind of avenues of your life and how you're choosing the people that you allow in it.
Yeah. As you're speaking, I remembered being in high school and hearing one of my teachers say, if you have 4 or 5 good friends as an adult, count yourself blessed. That's really wonderful.
Yes.
And I was listening to him and I knew everybody at this particular school. I'm like, only 5 friends? You're crazy. But he was very wise.
That is a very wise statement. And I think it's more needed than ever as we get older because we do tend to compare ourselves quite a bit. Social media does that to us a lot. We see how other people are living their lives. And as we know, social media is kind of a highlight reel. You're not necessarily seeing the truth all the time, but it's definitely difficult. And I am totally guilty of this, of, going on and scrolling and seeing how other people are making their life choices and what fun they're having, and, comparing kind of, what my life looks like compared to theirs. And sometimes that can leave you feeling a little depleted, maybe feeling a little envious, maybe feeling a little devalued, whatever word you want to use there. But the idea is you taking the time to really think about how you're being fulfilled, how you are being prioritized by these people in your life, how you are an active participant in these friendships, and what you need to ask for, what you need to set boundaries about. I mean, I could go down an enormous rabbit hole of, what it means to be a friend or what it means to have these relationships. So much goes into it, but the common denominator of relationships is that it takes work and it takes communication. And so here, when we build this village, when we look to build the village for each individual person, you have to do the work.
Yeah. It's interesting that sometimes we, in this age where we have so much abilities to communicate with people all over the world, we forget how important it is to work on communicating with the people that we're closest to.
That, I think, is very difficult for a myriad of reasons, but I think it's because we get caught up in the day to day. We get caught up in our lives, and we are busy people, and we're just trying to keep up. And I think sometimes we take for granted those close relationships around us. I come from a big Italian family, very close. And I was born into a village, of a lot of love and attention. But sometimes I think I can forget that, I'm giving so much of myself in all these different places in my life. But you know what? I need to reach out and ask my sister how she's doing the same way I would reach out and be asking one of my best friends who's on my mind. And, my sisters, we're all best friends, but sometimes I think you take for granted or you forget that those relationships that are maybe default relationships, or you were just lucky to be born into, or they're just part of your makeup, they're part of your life, they're part of your environment, those also need tending to as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One of the things, we encourage families here on the podcast to spend lots of time reading with their kids. And I think a lot of the people who listen to the show, their kids are their number one priority. And that's a wonderful, amazing thing. But how does a parent who is devoted to their kids and spending a lot of time with their kids find the time to do what we're talking about, to build those relationships with the grown-ups that we need in our lives to help us stay sane?
Well, it's funny because, mothers have recently been talking to me about this idea of rage, that they feel this mom rage kind of coming on. And diagnosing the issue was very interesting to me because it really stems from the idea that these long fuses that everyone has, they blow at some point. You can only take so much before you're like, that's it. I've reached my breaking point. And I think that's what happens to a lot of parents is they are so busy taking care of everyone else except themselves, especially mothers, where they feel like they don't have anything left to give at the end of the day because they've never had the chance to revive themselves, collect themselves, take care of themselves. And then that goes to the back burner each and every time. And those relationships that those mothers or parents want to have outside of their children in order to keep themselves sane, like you said, or to revitalize them in some sort of way, it doesn't become a priority. So in order to be able to do that, you have to be able to ask for help. You have to be able to ask your village to step in and say, you got to say, I need a date night with my spouse, or, I need to go out and have dinner with my girlfriends. I haven't seen them in so long. You need to ask for what you want. I think that's sometimes a trap that we set for ourselves is we want other people to read our minds or just anticipate those needs, or we don't want to be a bother, or we feel too guilty. But the truth is, if you don't allow yourself those release moments, then it is going to build up and you are going to explode. And you're not going to be able to show up and be the best version of yourself for anyone in your life, including your children.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think for a lot of people, it's really difficult to ask for help.
That is the number one issue, I think, besides speaking in public, right, for people's fears that they have in life. I think asking for help is extremely difficult because, again, there's the guilt that goes with that. There's fear of rejection that goes with that. There's the idea that people are going to judge you, think that you're not able to handle it. When other people around you look like they're handling it better than you are, you're going to be weak for it. There's so many things that go through your mind that stop you from asking for help, when really it's the simplest thing you could do to really change the whole rhythm of your life.
Yeah. There have been times in my life that I know that someone's wanted help, and whether it's a spouse or a friend or one of my kids, and it was like, they just, and it was hard for me not to just offer it. I wanted them to ask for help. And then after they asked, then I said, of course. They were so relieved.
Right. Exactly. It's amazing to see that relief, right? You know, and you know, that there's something to be said for a spouse or your significant other or a friend to know you so well that they're going to be able to step in and say, you know what, hey, you know, I can tell you've reached your limit, or I can tell you need some help, and I'm just going to show up there and do it. And there are those moments that happen. I can give you an example of, you know, when friends of mine have had a baby and I know that they are, you know, at their limit. They need to take a shower or just have a moment to themselves to walk around the block, or just have someone there to hold the baby, you know, just to give them a small break. You know, I have done that. I've been known to show up at my friends' houses and be like, hey, I'm here. It's time for you to shower. Go do that. And I'm going to hold the baby while you do it. And, you know, and that's an example of anticipating someone's needs. But the only way that you're able to do that is if you work on those friendships and you have a deep and meaningful one with them, where you feel comfortable to do that, or you feel like you're able to distinguish what that person might need. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to go and do that and show up at someone's house with a casserole and hold a baby, because, you know, that's what you need to do to help that person. But it's the idea that you are putting effort into the relationships that you have, where sometimes when you see the friend or the person in your life, or even if it's not a friend, just a person in your life that looks to be struggling, and you take a moment of reflection and think, what can I do to be helpful? And I think that's, you know, a larger kind of mission of my life is, I don't know the meaning of life. I wish I could answer that question, but I do believe for me, it is to live a life in service of others in many different ways, and to just help each other. And whether that's a stranger or my closest friend, I do like to be able to meet the moment. I do like to be helpful. Yeah. But that doesn't mean you ignore yourself either. You know, there has to be a balance. You know, that self-care, I'm always going to talk about being important, because unless you are caring for yourself, you will be able to do none of the things we've discussed today for others.
Yeah. And what a great model for our kids, you know, to have our kids see us be there for others, be there for family members, be there for their friends.
And teaching them that from a young age. You know, someone said to me once, you know, the phrase, you know, you learn it in the sandbox. You know, it's from, you know, it's happened from the moment, you know, in the sandbox. Well, my friend said to me, you know, well, who puts the sand in the sandbox? And I was like, yeah, you know, that's exactly it. That's our job, you know, when raising children, when being caretakers, is we're putting the sand in the sandbox. And that's part of what we're discussing here, is making sure our children are exposed to those healthy things in life, those healthy lessons. And as we see world crisis happen, you know, whether it's the shooting, you know, at a school, which, you know, I can't believe we still even have to talk about today, or, you know, it's COVID. It's a global, you know, pandemic. what we see in those moments is the humanity. And Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, he had a great phrase that said, when you're afraid, look for the helpers. That's what his mom used to say to him. And that's so true. I think of how we as human beings can be there for each other is, where can I help and how can I help? And we do see humanity prevail when things like that happen in the world. But I think that what's harder is it's not meeting the moment when something happens at a large level. It's meeting the moment when it's every day, and thinking of others first in your normal life when it's not a crisis moment. Yeah. It's all very important. Those crisis moments obviously are very important, but how do we make sure that we translate that same heart to the normal everyday?
Yeah, because it's that normal everyday that becomes instilled in us. When we're responding to an emergency, a crisis, it's like, yeah, you're there, but that energy kind of wears off after a while. We have to just get into the habit and help our kids get into the habit of just looking, where can I step in? Where can I help? Where can I be of service?
And that's the question. That is the question, is what can I do and how can I be of service? And it doesn't mean you have to have deep pockets. It doesn't mean you have to be, writing a check to these charities in order to make a difference. And that's fine for people that do it. Certainly. There's so many different ways to give and make a difference. But everybody can do something. It's just, it's about the timing of it. It's about the creativity of it. It's about making sure that you have a finger on the pulse of the needs. And I just want to really emphasize that to people, because I sometimes think people, are just feel like that there's nothing they can do, that they're not important enough, or they don't have enough to give. And it's not about the size of the gesture.
You are so incredibly passionate about this subject, and passionate about helping people build their village and find joy and happiness and love. Where did this passion come from?
Oh gosh. Well, I feel like, it's funny. I tell the story kind of a few different ways. But when I was younger, I used to ask my mom to take me to the hospital to have my baby. And what I meant by that was to take me to the toy store to buy a baby doll. And I would go home and I'd make birth certificates for all my baby dolls. And I was just obsessed. From the time I was a child, I was obsessed with, some sort of version of caretaking or, children and advocacy. And I think as I got older, I started to look at my childhood and the things I learned from my childhood in my village, and thought, in so many ways, I was so blessed. I was so lucky. But I also learned a lot of lessons. Everything wasn't always, shiny and bright. There were, struggles just like everyone else has as a child. And I thought, gosh, that's where I need to spend my time, is really concentrating on where children struggle or where they need to find joy or how we can support them. And then it just kind of spidered out from there, because I realized that the parents, the caretakers, the village itself, that was all influencing everything that happened with those children's lives, the same way it influenced what happened to me in my childhood, good, bad, ugly. And I thought to myself, that's a common denominator for all of us in this world. We all come from something, somewhere. We all had childhoods at some point. We all have family, but what are those relationships like? Are they positive? Are they healthy? What goes on when we actually peel back the onion? And that's really what led me to being a village advocate, because I feel it's one of the only ways we on a global level can really connect to each other.
Yeah. Hey, I know, Florence, it's a few months off, but you were sharing with me that you have a book that will be available talking about some of these things in the spring. Can you just give us a little sneak peek about that?
Yes. So, Build Your Village, a guide to finding joy and community in every stage of life. That book comes out February 21st. You can actually go on Amazon now and pre-order it, from what I understand, which is all very exciting. I decided to write the book to give you the directions on how to get to that village, how to build that village, regardless of whether or not you have children. It is for everybody, and no matter how old you are. And I wanted people to feel like I was there with them every step of the way and giving them actual, tangible, steps to take. And the book reads very much like a workbook, where you're going to walk away from every single chapter feeling like you know what to do, how to go out and do it, and it's going to make sense. I also have established 6 villagers in the book that you are going to relate to in some way or another. You're going to be able to identify them and say, you know what? I think I'm villager number 3 and 4 and 6. And I think I need in my life villagers number 2 and 3. And maybe you'll relate to all of them. Maybe you need all of them in your life. But the idea is that those 6 villagers are going to help you actually build that village based on the qualities that we look for in people in our life.
And the good thing is, like, unlike Survivor, it sounds like you can't get voted out of your village.
No, I'm not there to play judge and jury of who gets voted out of the village. You're going to have to make that decision for yourself. I'm not going to be firing anyone. But funny that you mentioned that. As you do the work in the book, as you do that reflection, you might end up doing some firing of your own for people that you have, because you're thinking, you know what? This person actually doesn't serve me in a way that I need or that is healthy. So I think there's going to be some major, and I hope to be some major self-discovery.
Well, I'm really excited for this. Florence, I know that you have a really wonderful website. Can you tell everybody where they can go to connect with you?
Sure, FlorenceAnn.com. And then also I'm all over social media, Florence Ann. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, and I do answer every single DM that I get. I'd like you to think your virtual village, whether it's a question about your family values or any of the blogs you read on my website or about my book itself, or just someone to vent to about what you have going on in your life. I'm here to support you.
We've had a really fun time and really interesting time speaking to Florence Ann Romano. Florence Ann, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you. The pleasure's all mine. What a great time.
Please join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Brady Smith. He's returning to celebrate his brand new graphic novel, Louie and Bear Fight Back. Hey, I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Chris, I want to start by thanking our guest, Florence Ann Romano. Also want to thank our sponsors, Libby Kisner. She is the author of Dear Libby, Will You Answer My Questions About Friendship? We also want to thank Carolyn and Mark Beener. Please be sure to check out Snowman at Halloween. My team, I want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Mirabella Q. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.